What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Tammy, aka the Cannabis Cutie, and I'm back for another episode for the Advocate series. And today I have with me the amazing Liz. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Hello. I'm good. I'm so glad to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. All right. So you know why we're here. We're here to talk advocacy. And now I found Liz during the pandemic. There were a lot of cannabis conversations that were happening on Clubhouse.
Yes.
That was how we were getting our social
What an
interaction.
era.
What an era.
It was such a good community.
Yeah.
Well, and still is, honestly.
Okay. I haven't been on there since the pandemic.
Well, I mean, like in real life now.
Oh, yes.
Like with all the people,
Yes.
Roger, literally
Yes.
was just talking about him.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people from Clubhouse.
I met so many people or reconnected.
Exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
John Capetta was
same.
heavy on Clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
The High Times room.
Yeah.
Who else was? I mean, there's so many people.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Mike.
Yes, that's how I met him as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
Tons.
Clubhouse was an era, but the thing that I loved about you were giving great business and marketing advice in the space. But one of the dope things was when I saw your Instagram, I was like, oh my gosh, she is talking about how she uses cannabis to deal with her endometriosis, which is a very common disorder that many women are living with and struggle to find relief for. So, wow. And then when you look at the science, we have CB1 receptors in our body, and we're always taught, oh, they're mostly in your brain. When we found out that actually they're most concentrated in your uterus. So are we even paying attention to these receptor sites?
No.
Right. So tell us about
Absolutely not.
All right.
And this is such an interesting conversation today and a little cathartic, honestly.
All right.
You know, the universe does those things sometimes. I think we're in a mercury.
We are in a Gatorade.
Microwave.
Yes. Micro braids.
And so, is it like Voldemort? You can't say the name.
Oh my gosh. We stopped using the word, didn't we?
Yeah. So, you know, I've been going through a lot personally with my advocacy of endometriosis and my own just personal battle with it, because it's such a forever thing. I got surgery, and I've used weed for my period for a long time now. And that was a journey in and of itself, which is too long for this. But, you know, it's been just that, a journey. There's always trial and error, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and finding balance of access to that. You know, I'm not always in California, and strains move and change, and things aren't always the same. And so finding also consistency, or like maybe I do need to change it up. There's constant, I'm like a lab rat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's the beauty of this plant. You kind of learn to become your own doctor.
Totally.
You have to learn your body and what works with your body.
Being an advocate for yourself even.
Ooh, how was that with doctors? Did you ever disclose that you were using cannabis?
So the doctor journey, I don't even know how many doctors I've seen at this point. It took a really long time to even find someone who would believe me, which is really real.
Yeah.
I've realized there's so many things that I've become so used to and desensitized to that when other people are like I was hanging out with this group of women and I was on my period. I was super late to joining them. I felt like shit. I barely made it. And this girl was like, oh man, like, I don't even know when my period comes. Like, it's just there. And I was like, I was like, what? I have like a week just like of my body prepping for the period.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even, like, I just couldn't even imagine that. And so, you know, a lot of people are very used to a healthcare system where you go to a doctor and you're like, this thing is wrong with me. And they're like, sweet, we'll fix it. You're good. You go. That stopped. That ended. You know, I was drug seeking. I was put on Wellbutrin. I was told I was depressed. I had to go see a therapist, which like everyone should do anyway. But like, we were addressing all these things that were being exacerbated by the problem. I had chronic UTIs for a long time. I just had a forever prescription of antibiotics. And, you know, my relationship with weed started to develop, but like there were so many things I was self-medicating on that even to this day, I'm still kind of like being like, oh, that's why I would do that. Or that's why I would be that way. And there's so many weird things about endometriosis that other people experience that it's like these weird correlations that I'm like, okay, there's trends here. So I'm sorry, I got on a tangent.
No,
but
you're explaining a lot, like what women, because that is a common gripe about feminine issues and why Black women specifically, their mortality rates are so high. God. Doctors just do not believe us when we say there's something wrong, we're in pain. Like we haven't been walking around in these bodies our whole lives and we know something is completely wrong.
Yes.
But again, trying to convince your healthcare system because
they just don't believe you.
Such an American issue. Pain is such an American issue, and how we manage that pain.
Oh my God. It's not preventative.
It's not preventative. It's not healthy.
And they don't look for the source.
Exactly.
It's always a Band-Aid. And so it was never like, I was always going to places like, I don't want drugs, actually. Like, that'd be cool. But like, I actually don't want those. I found out very early that painkillers and I did not vibe. And so, weed was always super important. And so there were some doctors I told that I smoked weed, especially if I was going into like a surgery or getting imaging done. I did try to be like upfront. There were definitely some doctors that were like, well, that could be making it worse and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, I promise you, this is not making it worse. Like, it's actually the only thing that's helping me. So for a long time, I had to get so many scans done. I would go and see different doctors, and they just, you know, it got to a point where my body was like freaking out. Like, and when that happens, there's other symptoms that show. So I would have chronic, like, not even acne, but like, this is kind of like TMI, but like cystic growths almost like on my face. Like I would just go to work and like throughout the day, my face would just like explode. Like it would just be like so puffy. I'm like, am I having an allergic reaction? Like, should I go to the hospital? Like, that's good. And I'd just be in so much pain. I'd have to bring a heating pad to work with me, which I realized wasn't normal. Like all these things, I also just was like, oh, everyone has painful periods and this just happens to everyone, right? No. That's not normal at all.
No, it's not normal. You're right. Your periods should not be painful. I read.
No.
That they should not be painful.
And they shouldn't impact your everyday life. So if you can't go to work, like if you can't go, you know, to class and because of your period, please go see a doctor. Start logging your period by writing it down on a pen and paper with a calendar. I promise you, it's annoying, but it's the most helpful thing to do. And it can be a part of your normal calendar. But like knowing what's going on with your body and taking the time to do those steps is going to be like critical because then like I've gone to doctors with basically like a log of my pain and symptoms. And when you can be exact and forthcoming and say, I was in pain for 28 of 30 days this week. I mean, this month. That's not okay. And they're like, yeah, that's not okay. And, you know, that way you're not like, oh, well, like, I mean, I might have hurt here. Or like it was, you write down, it was a sharp twisting pain in my side for a prolonged period of time. Like they cannot argue with that. And then also, you know, this sucks to say this, but like when you show concern over your fertility, they act quick. And it's really, it just makes me super sad. And I was told that by another person in the endo community. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, But why? Anyway.
But it worked.
It worked. And people see you really quickly. And because like endo does affect your fertility.
Yeah.
And they have to like, essentially if it's affecting your tubes, so that's a big mystery too. They also can't tell what it's affecting until they get in there.
Yeah.
And so you can just like they're like, so if these things are affected, we have to take them out. And I'm like, oh, cool.
Take them out.
Like if they can't flush your tubes and they're so impacted by like the lesions, they're dead. They can't do it. It's doing you more harm being in your body. Okay. And so they have to remove them. So you can just wake up with like missing shit. And you just go in and you're like, you have to say okay or not. Like you have to go in though for another surgery.
Oh my god!
And they don't obviously, they're like, they want to operate on you as little as possible.
Oh
and so, yeah, the whole thing is crazy. It took a really long time to find someone who believed me. And it was only because I had a cyst that was so big it had grown. They were watching it. I was like, what are we doing? This isn't a soap opera. Like, what the fuck? Like, this was huge to begin with. And so it kept growing. It was pushing into my ovary. I was like constantly bleeding. I don't even know how many, it was months. Like I was bleeding for months on end. And that was my first surgery. It was emergency surgery. This doctor was like, I think you have endometriosis. And it was the first time I even heard the word. No one had even discussed the options of what my pain could have been. PCOS, endometriosis. There's something I'm blanking on. Fibromyalgia. Fibroids. There's another one. Whatever. I'll think of it. But there's so many other things that it can be, and no one even went through that range. I was like, what's that? There can be like
PMDD.
There we go. That's what I was thinking of. And so, also the resources just weren't as available. Like you couldn't go online and just Google it. Like you have to go through like forums and all this stuff. And so there was like sparse things and, anecdotal. But it's really only just so recent that there's as much online as there is right now. But still not enough. And so like, it took a really long time to go through that process. And all through it, I was, consuming weed. I had like a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol that I had to end. And I realized a lot of that was because of the pain. Like I'd be in so much pain. And I was like, I don't really want to be in pain anymore. It's not that fun. And so, when I drank too, it would literally numb my body.
Alcohol can numb a lot of things, which is why this painful society in alcohol, there's no coincidence that we have an overconsumption of alcohol problem.
Absolutely.
Now, when you were charting, because you said this was how I was able to present it to doctor, I had my doctors, I had research. How did that charting differ from when you were using cannabis to when you weren't?
So your usage, so your cycles, and I'm not a doctor. By the way, I'm not a doctor. People will DM me, and I'll get into that later. But so basically, like, when I was using cannabis, and especially when I stopped using alcohol, a lot changed for my body because my cycle, like, I didn't realize how affected my body was by alcohol. And so like hangovers and your sleep cycle, everything is affected when you drink. And so my body had to really kind of like readjust. And that was shortly after my first surgery when I stopped drinking. And I like drank very hard after my surgery because I was really depressed and I was super confused. I was given this like essentially like a life sentence. They were like, by the way, this doesn't go away. And I was like, wait, what? And they were like, yeah, and you could get cancer, your fertility could be affected, like all these other wealths of issues, and you're going to maybe need more surgeries. And I was just like, wait. I didn't sign up for any of that. And so I had to really look at my relationship with things, food, alcohol, all of it, and it's still a process, but I was like, all of this stuff is affecting my body.
Yeah.
And it might not be the cause, but it's definitely
Setting it off. Yeah.
it's exacerbating the issue. And so when I really started relying on CBD too, like when I moved to California and when I had more options, because I'm from the East Coast,
Yeah.
you got what you got.
Yeah.
And only right when I was moving here, I-71 was starting in DC. And, you know, there was like bazaars and stuff, but it was still like what you got from whoever, and that's what you got. And you hoped it was good. And so when I could try bath bombs and suppositories and CBD mixed with THC and all these other things, like I quit cigarettes, I stopped drinking, I drank more smoothies. I was like fully keto for a while and, you know, just trying to really monitor my body. And I was like, man, like I have to work extra hard just to be at baseline. And I committed to that. And the pandemic kind of shook that up because then I needed a second surgery.
Yeah.
And so
I remember that.
That was nuts. It just
you went through so much.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
Changed doctors. I mean, you couldn't get surgery. You couldn't even get something at the hospital unless you were dying and in the ER. And it was so overwhelmed. It was a crazy time. There's like still stuff I'm recovering from that, like both physically and mentally.
It is traumatic.
It was scary to realize that those things are really not guaranteed to you.
Yeah.
And there are so many people that were so impacted by delayed diagnosis during that time. Yeah. And it's really horrible. And so, you know, it's just crazy trying to do that and be an advocate for yourself and be an advocate for others and inform and educate while also, you know, having energy for yourself at the end of the day. Because sometimes, like with my DMs, people will be like, oh, like, how did you cure yourself? Or like, and I'm just like, oh man. And I maybe get too emotional, but I'm like, dude, like, I didn't. I'm sorry that it even comes across that way. And I've had actually a really hard time recently with talking about endo and my periods because of like this shift in social media and how we create content and how we talk about things. And life has felt kind of like this weird, never-ending meme. And I'm like, I don't want to be depressing, but also not everything is a meme.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't want to like dance enough to talk about my endometriosis.
Exactly. That, can we just say that for the people who've been creating content pre-TikTok, like that don't want to do dances and trends to get our messages across? It's so tough to try to compete with that. It's so tough.
As a marketer, I'm like, I get it.
You have to play the game.
Other ways to play people. It's a different game now.
Yes.
It's not our game anymore.
No, it's not.
It's not for it.
We have to adapt.
We have to adapt. And so, you know, I've been really trying to still find that balance.
Yeah.
And I know everyone's been kind of working on this.
Yeah, we're figuring it out. Memes are the game right now, for sure.
Really is.
And as an advocate, it is so hard because you're like, I'm not an entertainer. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to educate and inform.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the way the AI works is they want to see trendy to push you. So you have to kind of figure out that healthy balance of still being yourself and getting your message across while also playing to the algorithm. So what would you say? What advice would you give a young woman who is using cannabis to heal or manage her PMDD or her endo or her PCOS or her fibroids? Yeah, which was what I use cannabis for. What advice would you give them as an up and coming advocate?
So, trust yourself and your body. If there are things that aren't working for you, and that it takes a lot of work to do that, like journal and write things down and stuff. And, you know, it's not always consistent, but doing that work will ultimately give you a stronger relationship with yourself and understanding of your body so that you know how to advocate for yourself. And so being able to track and all of that is amazing. And then also find community. it really helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, if you go on Reddit or Instagram, I think there is kind of one on TikTok. I haven't delved like too deep into that yet. Cause something about like sometimes medical TikTok like freaks me out a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, there's community everywhere. And if you need to vent and share your experience, it can be so isolating.
Yeah.
Because you think, why is this happening to me? There's a lot still that like you may not understand, and finding community and people to have, you know, that support from is so crucial, because like you can get support from family, from friends, from a loved one.
Yeah.
But having people who understand it, like not everyone experiences pain like that to that severity and that like consistent level of daily impact.
Yeah.
And that is a huge stressor on your body that I think some people really overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And having other people that understand that is just different.
Yeah.
And so helpful to not feel alone.
Yes.
Because it's happening inside of you. Like you look at me and you would never think that anything is wrong.
Silent diseases. You look perfectly healthy. There's no way you have anything going on. But yeah, finding your community. Even for me, I'm finding a vestibular community and I'm like, oh my gosh, because what I deal with, you get it at like 50 or 60 years old, and I've had it since I was a child. So, and now finding a community. So find your community. That is so important when it comes to being an advocate. And like Liz, you have to learn how to advocate for yourself before you can even advocate for others.
Yep.
So finding your community. Thank you so much for telling your story and being so brave to stand up to doctors and say, no, you're gonna help me. So
that's what they're there for. And sometimes you have to do a little bit of work though too to like, because not everyone is versed on it either.
No, you have to literally play at their level. Every doctor that I have always asks me, but at the end of the conversation, are you a doctor? No. But I knew exactly what to say.
Yep.
And which terms to use to get you to take me serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this was great. It actually helped. You also have to recommit to yourself and the mission, because it can get so exhausting. It can get exhausting.
We don't talk about that. How many times I've quit?
I quit this morning. I really did. I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today on the podcast, because I've honestly been the worst advocate lately.
No, I have those moments too, but you know what? You just need breaks.
Yeah.
And your mission always comes back to you.
It does.
Never
It
fails.
came back to
I
me,
quit,
actually.
and I'm like, I
so
can't
thank you.
do this. I'm done with this. Like, I can't do this. And then for whatever reason, I will get 20 DMs of people telling me how important this mission is and to please never stop. And that's by no coincidence. I'm on the right path, but it gets overwhelming dealing with what you're dealing with, plus trying to save the world in whichever way that you can.
Yeah. So take a break, and it's okay if you get tired. And that's also what community is there for, because you can fall back on them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And say, hey, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And they can be like, we're tired too. We'll like hold you up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have that community that sees what you're doing and absolutely believes in it. Your allies that will say it's okay to quit right now. Go cry, go rest. Let's reevaluate in about a week, okay?
Yep, exactly.
Thank you so much for coming through. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and download your free copy of How to Be an Advocate for more tips and tricks and ways that you can get out there with your cannabis advocacy right now. It's been a pleasure being here with you today.
Thank you so much.
And I'll catch you for the next one. Yay. Peace.